Hello, and welcome to River Reflections. River Reflections is a broadcast outreach of River of Life Ministries. We're a church in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Our church meets. Our address is 3412 Leonard Street, Northwest. That's on Leonard, just west of Remembrance Road. So if you take 131 to Leonard, go west, I think it's about 4 or 5 miles. Somebody will probably tell me if I'm wrong about that. And that's where our church is. Normally, the regular viewers of the show would typically see our pastor Rosemary or Robert here in this chair doing a teaching. I'm not the person that you would typically see. Who am I? Well, it's there on your screen, Richard Menninga. I am a deacon at River of Life Ministries, and I've been going there for about 30 years. One of the things that I love about this church, one of the things that first attracted me to this church, is the things you hear when you're at the church service, you take home with you. It's not a place where you go, you hear a nice message, you go home, and then when you get home, you're the same person that you were before you came to church. The messages are meant to encourage you, to exhort you, sometimes to challenge you, to be better than who you are. And the things, the teachings that I hear there are things that stick with me the next day, things that I'll remember the next week, and things that make a change in my life. And that's what I feel like church needs to be, not just a place where we sit and keep a seat warm for an hour or so. Another thing I like about River is it's a fairly small church, so the people there, they know you, but not only do they know you, they challenge you. They'll ask you, how is your prayer life and your devotions? How is your walk with God? What are you doing this week? Do you really think you ought to be doing that? Is that a good choice for a Christian? It's not a type of church where you can go and hide. Though we do have sometimes people will sit in the back and we don't have a whole lot of conversation with them, but for the most part, it's a church to go, to get to know people, and to be known by people. But the other thing about these people that have known me for 30 years, they know my flaws, they know my problems, they know the things I struggle with, and they still love me. Because they know that we're human. We all have our struggles, we all have things, flaws that we work through, but we're all striving to be more like Christ. That's the other thing I love about us, the people that I meet at River. Our goal is to become more like Christ, to learn more of His Word, to follow God's Word. If you're looking for that in a church, I encourage you to come, stop by. Even though we're a tight-knit group, we're not closed. People might think we look like a clique, but we're a very open clique if we are. Come join us. You'll feel welcome. Our church times, we meet on Saturday mornings at 9:30. We start with prayer time, and followed by a teaching. Later on Saturday mornings, we have a brunch at approximately 10:30, and then we go into another teaching time later on. We also meet on Wednesday nights at 6:30 is when we start our service on Wednesdays. So please come visit us. If you like what you hear here on the broadcast, you'll like what you hear at the church. This teaching actually started as a seed almost 6 years ago. And again, I'm not usually a person that teaches on camera, but I was challenged to by the folks in my church and was told that I could do that. So even though it wouldn't necessarily be my choice, it's something that I don't want to say I was pushed into it, because I was willingly pushed into it. But 6 years ago, I did a weblog on Xanga. For those of you that remember that website, Xanga, before the Facebook became very popular. And I did a post that I called The Glamorous Life of a Successful Musician. And I was talking about one of my friends from work named Brandon. And so my post said, meet Brandon. He started his musical career at a young age, and I have a picture of him as a child with his little trumpet. And I talked about how he stuck with it through high school and was in the marching band. After high school, like 4 years later, a friend asked him to be in a ska band, which he is currently in. And the band has made several albums. They've toured all over the United States. They've gone to California, Japan, Brazil, Europe. So they've toured, they've had albums. You may have seen them featured in the Grand Rapids Press. And then I asked the question, so what does this successful recording artist do when he's not on tour or in the studio? And I posted this picture. It's too far away for you to see. But it's my friend Brandon, and he's holding this bag. It says soiled linen that he's collecting, which is one of his main jobs at the hospital, the same place that I work. Is how I know Brandon. So here he is, the successful recording artist who goes on tour, working part-time, basically picking up soiled linen. So I said, so kids, practice hard, achieve your goals, become successful, and you too may be picking up soiled linen. Well, after that weblog, my pastor Rosemary left a comment talking about success and how the world measures success. And she doesn't know my friend Brandon, but for Brandon or anybody else to become successful is different from what the world sees, from what other people sees. And she listed some verses, and she challenged me. She said, you know, if you studied these things, you could probably put together a sermon for television. Well, here I am, nearly 6 years later, but it is happening. So sometimes people have to push for a little while before things happen. So how does the world define success? Most of the time, it just comes back to money. If you call somebody a successful businessman, you think, well, he has a successful business, meaning the business makes money. And he's probably a successful man, meaning the man also has some money, probably lives very comfortably. A successful athlete, well, that's someone who is strong or agile. They're good at their sport, but again, you probably are a successful athlete as someone who makes money doing their sport. Someone who plays baseball and stays in the minor leagues is not going to be considered a successful athlete until they really move up to the majors, because there's always people that are better than them and making what? More money than them. Some see success as having a nice house, a nice family. With some guys, they need to have a pretty wife that they call a trophy wife, or a handsome husband if you're a woman. But a lot of people in the world, if they see a woman with a very handsome-looking husband, they'll say, she married well, because that's what the value is for them, as a handsome husband. Also with the family, you've got to have your kids and that are well-behaved, but some people, to be successful, they need to get their kids in the right school, sometimes even the right preschool, so they can get the Head Start, so they can get in the right college, so they can get the right job, and so their children too can be successful as the world views success. For some people, success means wearing the right clothes, and not just clothes that look good, but have the right designer label on them. You've got to have the designer shoes. You can't have knockoffs. You've got to smell nice. You can't be wearing some cheap cologne. You've got to wear the nice designer cologne. Some people in the world see success as having influence. If you're a man who's in charge of 1,000, 2,000 people, you might be seen as a person of influence if you're the boss of a corporation, or even the boss over part of a corporation. Or if you're someone that speaks to crowds of thousands, people pay you money to come talk to this crowd. You could be a motivational speaker, you could be a weight loss guru. Even people in the ministry, preachers, are considered successful. Often they're judged by the number of people in attendance at their church or at the places where they go to speak. And they're defined as, oh, he's got a successful ministry. He's reaching out thousands. A pastor of a church of 23 people is less likely to be described as having a successful ministry. But we'll talk about that. Some people see success as wisdom or skill. A successful doctor could perform a heart transplant, and the patient goes on to live a long, healthy life. Some success is strength personally. They keep themselves fit and trim. They can go out and run. They take good care of their body. But that's how the world sees success. Let's back up a little bit and go to Jesus' time, because they were dealing with some of the same issues of people that were successful in Jesus' day, of his peers, or at least what the world considered successful, were the scribes and the Pharisees. They were the religious leaders. They were the keepers of the law, not just ones that kept the law, like obeyed it, but they determined what the law is, how the other people needed to be act. They were teachers of the law as well. And these were the leaders of the religious leaders of that day. And in the Bible, I'm reading from Matthew 23, verse 27 and 28. Jesus was addressing the Pharisees, and he said, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like whitewashed tombs, which on the outside appear beautiful, but inside they are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. Even so, ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within you're full of hypocrisy and iniquity." So how did he describe these Pharisees? Looking good at the outside, and he compared them to whitewashed tomb, which that's basically like a casket, or where you put the dead body in. You make it look good on the outside, that's fine, but what's on the inside is a dead, stinking corpse. And it's a dead man's bones and uncleanness. He said, you're the same way. You make yourself look good on the outside. You may look good to most people, but you're not fooling God, because God can see inside. He can see you're full of hypocrisy and iniquity. Jesus had a different standard than the world's standard of success. And even before Jesus' day, God made it clear that he does not look on the outward appearance. In the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel chapter 16, God talked to Samuel, who was a prophet at that time, and Samuel was going to anoint a new king for Israel, because Saul's heart was already turning, and God wanted to select someone else. And Jesse, one of the men of the town, brought his sons before Samuel and God told Samuel, I'll tell you which one is the one that I'm going to anoint. And as Jesse's sons came through, one of his oldest sons, I forget his name right now, but he was tall, he was good looking, he was a man of strength. And Samuel looked at him with his eyes and thought to himself, surely this is who the Lord is going to anoint. But God said to Samuel, and this is in this verse 7, do not look excuse me. Let me get some water here. Do not look at his appearance or at the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For God sees not as man sees. For man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. This was recorded in Scripture at that time of Samuel. The Pharisees knew this verse. They knew that God looked at the outward appearance, but the Pharisees and the scribes were still looking for the approval of man and not necessarily the approval of God. Now, when Jesus was on earth, he had a message to get out. He had things that he wanted to tell the people of that day. But he didn't seek out people that were successful in that day. He didn't look for people that already had crowds following them. He didn't look for somebody with public speaking experience that knew how to draw a crowd. He found people that were available, and they ultimately became successful and influential because they followed him. Let me say that again. Jesus didn't seek out people that were successful. He found people that were available, and they became successful because they followed Jesus. Luke chapter 5, verses 1 through 10. I'm not going to read this whole passage, but it talks about a time that the crowds were pressing into Jesus, Jesus got into a boat and told the boatman, who was Simon, to take him out a little bit from shore so he could talk to all the people without being pressed on, and so that all the people could hear with him just a little back from the shore. He kind of created his own amphitheater there. When he was done speaking, he told Peter to take the boat a little farther out, drop his nets, and they had a miraculous catch of fish. And the people that worked with Peter, a couple of them, James and John, were there also. They saw what he had done, and they had heard his teaching. And they left everything and followed Jesus. These were fishermen. They didn't have designer clothes. Their clothes probably weren't even very clean. They sure enough didn't smell nice. They probably smelled like fish. But they became some of the most influential men in their day. They spread the gospel after Jesus' death. And in Acts 4, chapter 13, this was a time after Jesus' death, they were preaching to many people. And the verse says, the people were listening to them teach. And it says, now when they saw the boldness of Peter and John and perceived that they were uneducated and untrained men, they marveled, and they realized that they had been with Jesus. What made the difference? What made them from fishermen to influential men? They had been with Jesus. That's how that happened. One of the verses that I have to thank my pastor Rosemary for giving me, since she left this comment on the aforementioned weblog, Jeremiah 9, verses 23 and 24. Thus says the Lord, let not a wise man boast of his wisdom, and let not the mighty man boast of his might. Let not a rich man boast of his riches. So not wisdom, not might, not riches, but let him who boasts boast of this, that he understands and knows me, that I am the Lord who exercises loving kindness, justice, and righteousness on earth. For I delight in these things. What should you boast in? That you know God. And what does God do? He exercises loving kindness, justice, and righteousness. God delights in those things. He wants us to delight in those things as well. And that's what we should boast in. That's what's going to make a change in us, is knowing God. Success transcends being part of a successful sports team, part of a popular band, how you earn your living, how much money you have, fame, power. Success starts with where you're at in your relationship with God through Jesus Christ and in the power of His Spirit. Now, when I was studying this, I decided to do a word search and see how many times or what verses in the Bible actually had the word success in them. And when I did a search, I only found one verse, and I'm going to read that for you. It's Joshua 1, verse 8. And it says, this book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. How will you have good success? Read the book of the law, read the Bible, meditate on it day and night, get to know what it says, that you may observe to do according to what's written in it. And then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Now, I'm going to give one other side to success, and that's about contentment. Paul in Philippians chapter 4, and that'll be on screen, says, I speak in regard to need, for I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. I know how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I've learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to have plenty and to suffer need. Paul learned to be content regardless of what he had, plenty or little, whatever the world considered success or not. He learned to be content in what he had. And another chapter, and I love this section in the Bible, it's 1 Timothy chapter 6, And it's verse 6 through 11. And the first verse, verse 6, says, "Godliness with contentment is a great gain." I'm going to read through all of this first, and then I'm going to come back to it. "Godliness with contentment is a great gain, for we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and clothing, with these we shall be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is the root of all evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. But you, O man of God, flee these things, and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, and gentleness." Now I want to start back at verse 6 again. "Godliness with contentment is great gain." First, godliness. We talked about learning God's law, following it, do that. But secondly, contentment. Be content with the things that you have. And what does it say that is? Great gain. Not amassing more stuff is great gain. Not a big house is great gain. Godliness and contentment. Verse 7, "For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out." You've heard people say you can't take it with you. That's right there in the Bible. That's exactly what that verse is saying. You can't take it with you. Anything you amass on yourself in this world, it's not leaving this world, but you are. And having food and clothing, with these we shall be content. Just those two things. Did you have a meal today? You didn't have to leave the house naked. You've got food and clothing. With those things, be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare. That's the first part of verse 9. If you desire to be rich, you'll fall into temptation and a snare. So many people think, oh, if I could just make a little more, then I'd be happy. If I just had a slightly bigger house, then I could be comfortable. Sometimes if my TV screen were just a little bit bigger, then I'd be happy. It's a trap. It's never going to be enough. Whatever you think, you just need this one little more, or this more, or this more, and then I'll be happy. Once you get that, there's going to be something else that you need to make you happy. Well, what you need to do is to be happy with the things that you've got. Continuing on verse 9, "Those who desire to be rich, they fall into many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition." And I couldn't help but think about, again, successful athletes, especially, I have nothing against the NFL. I like to watch NFL football. But if you were to go on the computer and do a Google search on NFL athletes and arrests, you would find many records of these athletes who were arrested for drunken disorderly conduct, for drug use and drug possession, some of them for violence at home. These men are not happy people. They have success on the football field maybe. They might have financial success for a brief time while they're getting paid, but they're living their lives as if they're trying to escape something. What they have is not enough to satisfy them. Verse 10, "For the love of money is the root of all evil," one of the most misquoted verses in the Bible. It does not say money is the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. The wanting more, the greediness, the hunger for more money is the root of all evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. That just stood out to me. Many sorrows. People are trying to get more money to make themselves happy. And just the opposite is happening. They think, if I get this, I'll be happy. They amass more money and they become sad. They're pierced through with many sorrows. It's having the opposite effect of what they desire. But, verse 11, "You, O man of God, flee these things and pursue" what? "Righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, gentleness. That sounds a lot like the list of the fruit of the Spirit, but these are all attributes of God. The more you read His Word and learn to know what God is like, you learn about His love, you learn about His patience. You also learn that He's a righteous and a just God. So, putting it into practice, that godliness and contentment. One, put godliness in practice. Almost the opposite of godliness is selfishness. People say, or they used to say, you got to look out for number one, meaning yourself. Well, that's our human nature to do that. We don't need to be taught to look out for ourselves. We're born that way. From the time you're a baby, you want for you. What we need to do is we need to go against that human nature and follow God's nature and be able to sacrifice and look out for our neighbor, look out for the person next to us. Give of your time, money, and energy, not to yourself, but to others. Exercise godliness, not selfishness. And contentment. Paul said that he learned that, so that's something that we have to put into practice. Maybe your kitchen isn't big as you wish it was, but you've got a kitchen and you know how to cook. You need to be okay with that. Maybe your clothes aren't designer clothes, but be happy with the clothes you have. Maybe you're looking for the perfect mate and you haven't found that yet, and you wish God would hurry up and introduce you to that mate fast because you're not getting any younger. Well, maybe you need to be okay with being single if that's where God has you right now. If you need a bigger kitchen or better clothes or that mate to make you happy, that's a trap. That's not going to make you happy. There'll always be something else you need. So, exercise godliness, practice contentment, and that is how you'll measure success in your life. Thank you for listening, and I'm just going to say a brief prayer. Lord, I thank you for the things that you have given us, that you've blessed us with. Help us to be content with those and continue to follow after you. In Jesus' name, amen.